So Kresge is one of the most major foundations in the world. So I went to this workshop that they did, and they had a very interesting story. And they said, you know, for 100 years, I mean, they've been giving money for about 100 years. We've been giving money to the, I think of it as kind of blue chip, but kind of to the most grand buildings in a city. So it might be a university, a symphony, an opera, a ballet. So you go to these buildings that have been around for 100 years, and it'll say Kresge Foundation on them. And Kresge specializes in capital campaigns. Does anybody know what a capital campaign is? Does anybody know what a capital campaign is? It's a particular type of fundraising, and it's technically used to build buildings. So a capital campaign is always a multi-million-dollar campaign to build buildings. And that's what I was doing in San Francisco. I was there to raise $38 million to build a new YMCA. And so I sit down and I listen to these people talking, and Kresge had shut down for 2 years. And all they did for 2 years was vision. You know, they wanted to have a new vision for what they were going to do with their literally billions and billions of dollars. And they came out of that 2 years with a very, very clear mandate, which was, we're still going to build buildings. We're still going to have invest in capital campaigns, but we're going to invest in the inner city. We're going to invest in the poorest of the poor, which was the exact opposite to what they had been doing for 100 years, where they were basically investing in the wealthy. So this was a radical, radical change. And they said, you know, we never hear from YMCAs. YMCAs never think to apply to the Kresge Foundation, and we would love to invest in YMCAs. So I wrote a proposal to them, and they gave us $75,000 to do an environmental feasibility study to make sure that the building we were going to build was going to be a gold standard environmental building. And we did this big work day with the architects and everybody, and it was great. So one day, the CEO of the San Francisco YMCA gets a phone call from Kresge. And Kresge said, we just funded this proposal for your YMCA in the Tenderloin. The Tenderloin is the poorest neighborhood in San Francisco. And we just got a proposal for this feasibility study, and we'd like you to send us another proposal for $2 million towards your building. And you know what the CEO said to us? You will not be making that application. So if anybody ever wondered why I no longer work for the YMCA, because I loved working for the YMCA, it was because of that. That Kresge called up and said, we would like to have a $2 million proposal from you. And they said no. And that's why that YMCA has never been built, not because of the money, but because of the internal politics that who knows? So I left the Y and I went to youth radio, where they teach young people to be broadcast journalists. And I wrote a proposal to Kresge. And the very, very, very wealthy people in San Francisco know the Haas family, Haas, the Haas family. But there's all these foundations, and they're gazillionaires, whatever. Anyway, we had a Haas on our board, and he would always come in with his sidekick, who was the director of development at the University of California, Berkeley. And again, they raised millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. So I show up, the brand new director of development at Youth Radio. I said, I'm going to submit us an application to Kresge. And they laughed at me. They laughed at me. Kresge's not going to be giving any money to a youth organization based in Oakland. So I did it in secret. I wrote the proposal in secret. And I wrote to Kresge and I asked for $1 million, and they called me up and they said, well, we're going to say no. But that doesn't mean to say that you couldn't come back and just ask for a smaller amount. And I said, okay. So I changed the budget, $250,000. Yes, we got $250,000 from Kresge. And then Youth Radio let me go. And they let me go. And I showed up at this event to celebrate the new building that we needed to raise they hired me to raise $5 million. And I was there for 5 months. By myself, I raised $2.2 million. We didn't know that when they let me go. But I went to the event and I thought, I'm going to show up. So I showed up and the executive director apologized to me. And she said, you know, I feel really bad about the way that I treated you and the fact that we let you go. And I said, oh, will you put that in writing? So if you look on my LinkedIn profile, that recommendation is there from her, and that's what that's about. She fired me. So anyway, after I left, they got the $250,000. Kresge said, called them up and they said, we'd like to give you some more money. And we're going to give you $500,000. And a few months went by and they called up and they said, we'd like to give you some more money. We're going to give you $750,000. And there's a match. So Youth Radio had to raise $250,000 from major donors. And so ultimately the gift was $1 million. And the reason I'm talking about all of this big story with all this big money, is that nobody ever gets to be raising those kind of monies without the kind of training that I had. And the training that I had was a 3-day conference on fundraising. I picked the different slots, and I picked to go to Kresge, and Kresge trained me in what they wanted to fund. Okay, Kresge told me, we want proposals from the YMCA. No YMCA had ever got money from Kresge before. We want proposals from the YMCA. When I went to Youth Radio and I said, I'm going to apply for money from Kresge, the people who knew the old Kresge laughed at me because they were in the old paradigm of what Kresge used to fund. And they didn't know about the new paradigm, which I had heard from their mouth, right? And when it comes to funders, knowing what they want to fund is everything, is absolutely everything. Because even when for 100 years this organization had done a certain thing, they decided to change their minds and do this instead. And that can happen. If an organization, I mean, Kresge is still my favorite foundation anywhere, but it's because they are so forward thinking. They're willing to say, you know what, we're shut down for 2 years. We don't think we're on the right path. We'll shut down for 2 years and make sure we're on the right path. And they came out with something entirely different. So now Kresge is a big organization, but an individual is exactly the same. An individual is somebody that you need to learn what it is that they are interested in funding. You know, you need to find out what it is that these people do. So if I were going to invest in fundraising, something I might invest in would be research. So I've been telling my clients that I'm very, very annoyed with the foundation directory, the foundation center directory, because the new organization that took it over just keeps putting up the price, you know. So I found a bill from about 2 years ago, and it was $51 a month. And I resented it because when I lived in San Francisco, I could go to the foundation center for free, but they've all been closed now. But now it's $219 a month to get the foundation directory. And you can do all your research about foundations in the foundation directory. But research is a good thing to invest in, to sort of be like, I'm going to start out, I'm going to invest something. Another, so training, any kind of training, research, those are really good things. There are, in the fundraising world, there are all kinds of databases that give you access to the most private information about people's financial situation that you can imagine. I have a client, we raise money from very wealthy people. And I had been working with him for about 2 years before he finally allowed his assistant into the spreadsheet that we use. And we call it highly confidential, because we're talking about people. We don't really go into all of this in-depth analysis of their financial lives. Often they're well known, and but that is another thing that you could invest in. You could invest in access to research. You could invest in a month or two, being a member of LexisNexis, and you could find out all about people's real estate holdings and things like that. So research is a really good thing. And then, I think probably the next thing to be thinking about investing in would be to invest in some help, some help with your fundraising. So, if you could invest in hiring somebody, and you started out at something like 4 hours a week, right? That would be a way to get started. And they could do research for you. They could organize things. They could help you send out emails, things like that. But that would be a way to start, to have a few hours of help every week, and have somebody to help you with your fundraising outreach. Even if it was somebody to just talk things over, that could be useful. But often fundraising does involve a lot of research. And most people on here yesterday and today are my clients, but of course you can hire me and I will teach you fundraising. So, that's another possibility. And then I have another program I do where I bring on a team and we do the fundraising for you. So that would be kind of, down the road for many of you. But investing in fundraising, and I think, starting with training is a really good way to go. People who are my clients, they're already on that path. They're already on the path of I need to learn how to do this. I gotta improve my fundraising skills. So that's you're in the right place. You're definitely in the right place with the training. So I'd like to check in a little bit for those of you who were here yesterday. I'd like to hear from you what you took away from yesterday. What did you take away from yesterday? I was superbly entertained by the exercise we did at the end, where we came up with your top 3 fundraising choices. I thought that was great. But what did you take away from yesterday? Leo, you're unmuted. Let's start with you.
Well, the biggest thing I believe was that my vision was very narrow. I thought raise money for a film, you do crowdfunding and just do that. Well, there's other things you can do. For example, a grant for a narrative film. I didn't know that such a thing existed. I do now. So thank you for that.
In your backyard.
Yeah, in my backyard, it's true.
Did you look up the San Francisco Arts Commission?
No, I have not yet, but I will. I mean, actually, I
You
have a
will.
team member who's going to do that for me.
Wow. And who, tell me about your team member.
Oh, well, let's see. Her name is Joe Policastro. Um, well, let's see. She's doing a large range of a big range of projects for me, including getting in touch with film festivals out of the
Mm,
US, which is something I'm interested in doing. And
mm, mm. What makes you interested in film in festivals outside the US?
I think that my film, California Shorts, will, if I can get into film festivals in Europe and Southeast Asia, I think that I'll get some press. I think I'll get some publicity from that. And you know, at the very least. So that's when I'm
Yeah,
counting.
yeah, I would recommend also that you do apply to the festivals right around you, so
Ah,
that you can
yes.
network at those, you can network
Ah,
locally, meet
very
other
well.
filmmakers, other writers, whoever you're looking for. But do the local one as well. I think that's a
Oh,
really good way to go. Um, and you were mentioning about not knowing about grants for narrative film. There are also, actually, I don't talk about this particular way of fundraising particularly, but there are also many competitions that have money attached,
yes.
right?
Yes.
Competitions, script competitions. I know you have several scripts. Um, I have a client with a brilliant script who I'm waiting to hear from. He applied to some competitions for the very first time. He'd never applied to any before. And I'm waiting to hear how that script does. It's just brilliant script. So there are competitions and there's money in that sense, but there are also definitely grants. And one of the things I always talk about. So yesterday I talked a lot about the local grants.
Mhm.
Wherever you live, there are some grants for artists. I don't know why it is that filmmakers miss this, but there's the $10,000 grant in San Francisco. If you know people in Oakland, there's a $5,000 grant every year in Oakland, a bunch of them that go out. And I think that's specifically a film grant. But often the local grants will just say artist. It doesn't necessarily say filmmaker. And I always think maybe that's why filmmakers don't apply for them. You know, I can't really explain it, but I'm always saying, please make sure that every local grant you can apply to, you apply, you know? And so where you are, Leo, there's the Center for Cultural Innovation. You can also apply for a technical assistance grant from them.
Yeah,
Okay.
very well.
$750. And again, you can apply for it every year. So, all right, great. I'm so glad that your mind went, ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. All right, Mark, what did you take away from yesterday?
I took away to put the fun back in fundraising.
Yes, yes, yes,
Uh,
yes, yes.
and it also encouraged me that I need to spend more time looking at grants. I've got a list of all the things I'm doing with individuals, but you gave me that great list of foundations, and I need to mine it.
Yes, and I think that what I would say with you is that you are very, very good at your major donors. Very
Mhm.
good. And then what happens is what I was saying yesterday, and this happens to everybody, but you get good at something and then you drop everything else, right?
Right.
I'm good at this thing, so then I drop. Whereas, what I say to my clients is, I want you to send out one application a month. one grant application a month. No kind of, watching to see if you got it or not, just one a month, one a month, one a month, one a month.
Great.
Just keep going, right? So if you can put that into your schedule, and I know for myself, what?
That's doable. Because
That's doable.
because I've been thinking, it's like I'm a one-man band, and I don't have enough energy to play the drums right now.
Right. But what I'm doing with going through these 5 stages
Right.
is to try to get you off that, one-man band thing. So, the next time you get an award, you get a $15,000 check, put some of it aside and say, I'm going to invest that in fundraising.
Okay.
Is that somebody to help you 4 hours a week? Is that somebody to research through all those foundations for you and pick the top, 12? Is it somebody to create a calendar for you so that you have your one a month for 12 months sorted out, so you don't have to keep looking for it, oh, here's my calendar for 12 months, but something to invest in fundraising to take you a step further. That's really what this whole class is about. You're a one-man band. How do we start to change that into, and we're going to hear from you later, but that's what I would say is like, what can I take out of this? I get a check for $5,000. If I take this, if I get a check, can I take this? What can I put into my can I start putting a little fundraising bucket that I can start saving up and then do something to invest in the fundraising? That's my recommendation. But I think, one proposal to go out a month. And what I was going to say is, for me, if I'm going to be doing something that is hard for me, so for you, you often meet with your donors, you have dinner with them, that stuff is easy for you. When you're going to do something that's hard for you, I have to do it at the beginning of the day. Now, I'm not saying that's the case for everybody, but for me, I have to start my day with that. So I'm going to schedule.
In a recent conversation that we had, you suggested to figure out what's the hardest thing to do today, and to start the day off with the thing that I have the most resistance or charge around.
Yeah, I'm a very morning person though, so I know for me, that's what works for me. First thing, I do the hardest thing. But if you might be a night person and maybe you do the hardest thing at midnight, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Is like I'm not sure, but I know for me, I start with the hardest things. So I would schedule, maybe it's an hour a week, 4 hours a month to put together a proposal a month. Something like that.
Okay.
But once it's scheduled, yeah, go ahead, Leo.
I used to have a trainer who told me, locate something in your mind that you have been putting off, and then do that. And then locate something that you really don't want to get involved in. You just don't do that first. So that's exactly the kind of thing.
Yeah. That really reminded me something a trainer taught me. She had said it one time and it became a life thing, which was find the part in your body that doesn't hurt.
Oh. Locate the part of the body.
That really, really made an impression on me. I don't know why. It's great. This hurts, but what about, well, let me focus on that part. I love it. All right, Mike or Yvette, I'd love to hear what you took out of yesterday. Mike.
So, thank you, Joanne. Just in hearing you speak and remembering the Buffett connection and underscoring what interests him. Well, he's interested in Native Americans. And where does that tie into my project? The basketball project is we're in Western New York. The Seneca Nation called us the Brown Indians. Now, the school had to change its name. However, I have a meeting with the Seneca Council. And if anybody knows about Native Americans, it takes months. They don't move quickly. So I have a meeting about the project, the basketball project, with them. And so maybe there's a way I can bring this project
Yeah,
to his
I
foundation and
like,
what he
I
likes.
like that. I like that because I think that this is right now, this is the project I mean, you've got a ton of projects, but you're focusing on this project.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it would be a good idea to talk to him about it since you have the connections.
Mhm.
And, you know, when you're speaking to high net worth individuals, you know, it's always good to be able to offer them choices. You know, so for example, when I was at the Y, I could say, well, we have this youth program and we have a media center and we're teaching young people, they get trained to become Microsoft technicians. And if the person is not interested, you know, I might say, well, we have a senior program.
All right.
We work with seniors, and we have a particular program in there where there's a group that are all people who've had heart attacks, and you go with and find what it is that they resonate with, you know.
Mhm.
But you have a selection of choices, but I think that it would be nice to start with this project since this is the one that's moving, that has the momentum, that there's a timeline, that there's a budget clear and all of that.
Yeah, so thank you.
And if he's not
First,
interested, you just say, okay, well, what about this one?
sure, it could be that Fort Nassau project. It could be our filmmakers lab entering its 11th year, which is a nonprofit. I already know that he's sponsoring the Woodstock Film Festival. I'm starting to see the Nova Foundation all around the Hudson, what we call the
Right.
Hudson Valley.
You're starting to learn what he's
He's
funding and what
interested.
he's interested in. And exactly. Yeah. And that's very worth doing the research. Who was it? Oh, Paris yesterday asked me about AI. I wonder if you put into Chat GPT. Well, it's 2 years old, right? But, you know, that might be a place that you could just sort of find out more about him easily, or Google it.
Excellent.
But yeah,
Mhm.
I think that's great. Yvette, can you speak?
Yes, and I'm gonna try to put on my camera today. I'm gonna see if it
Oh,
works.
wow.
It's dark. See, it's
So
lagging. I'm
dark.
moving and it's not moving.
You know, I was telling you about when I taught in Nancy Fulton's
Yes,
class. That's
Nancy's
exactly what
class.
I looked like. I looked exactly like that.
Exactly.
I was
Here
in the
I
dark.
There you
Oh my
go.
goodness.
am.
How did you do that?
I don't know. This thing just lags. Look at that, crazy.
Yeah, it lags. It lags.
Yes. But I got a lot yesterday out of what we were speaking about, what we were talking about yesterday. Also, like Leo, we had our breakout session together, and the local funding grants for narrative, you know, projects. That was new to me. I mean, everything here is new, but that was very interesting. Also, I got a lot out of the small donors turning into major donors. So working on,
Oh, you're a smart cookie.
yeah,
Yes.
working on, getting the small donors, turning them into major donors to help you with your crowdfunding. So that was very interesting.
Very good. Very good. A couple of things I just want to say. So you said about local grants for narrative projects. I would say
Right.
it's a little different than that. So as I said, it will say artist grants. So you're going to be in the same pool as a painter. who's
Mhm.
making paint, who's developing a show, or you'll be in the same pool as a dancer who's developing a dance project, right? So when you're applying as a film, it's not so much that you're applying as a narrative filmmaker, you're applying as a filmmaker making a project.
Okay.
It's a subtle distinction, but all I'm saying is, I think filmmakers make the mistake of looking for film grants.
Right.
It's not, it's an artist grant.
Okay.
It's locally an
Mhm.
artist grant, and they're not specifying film. Now, here in Miami, for example, Miami-Dade County Cultural Affairs, they have artist grants. They don't have anything specifically for film,
Amazing. Okay.
right? But you, as a filmmaker, you can apply just the same as somebody who's creating a painting show.
Mhm.
Then there's another organization that's actually a visual arts organization, and they have a specific grant for film.
Okay.
They have a $50,000 grant to make a feature film. And it could be documentary, it could be narrative. So, but it's specifically for film. So what I'm trying to say is that the local grants could, and in California, where Leo is, at the state level, there are grants for documentary films and grants maybe for narrative films. Now I'm trying to think if there's two organizations or just one. I'm forgetting California since I moved away.
I'm in California as well. Mhm.
Yeah, you're in LA, right?
I'm in LA. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Well, in San Francisco, there's an organization called the San Francisco Film Society that runs the San Francisco International Film Festival. But they have an artist development program, which is all filmmakers, right?
Mhm.
And if you go to the San Francisco Film Society website, and this is for everybody here, they have grants for filmmakers not based in San Francisco. They have grants for filmmakers that are actually international. So you could be an international filmmaker and apply for a grant through the San Francisco Film Society. And they have a whole range of grants. They have documentary grants, they have fiction grants. Leo, did you know about this?
No, I did not. No.
Well, San Francisco Film Society. When you go on their website, they have several different programs. They have two programs for science-based films.
Mhm.
I think one is fiction and one is documentary. I could be wrong about that, but one is definitely fiction. So the San Francisco Film Society, and then there are several organizations like that. Sundance is like that. Film Independent in LA
Yeah.
is
They
like
have the
that.
Sloan, I think it's called for the science. Sloan, Alfred
Right.
Sloan.
Well,
something like-
yes, the Alfred
Mhm.
P. Sloan
Yes.
Foundation funds science projects through the San Francisco Film Society and through Film Independent.
Mhm, mhm.
I have a client, we just got another 250,000 from Sloan that we go directly to
Mhm.
Sloan for a film science project. But this Alfred P. Sloan Foundation is very, very interested in funding. I have a client who would call it science communications, but they
Mhm.
don't mind if it's fiction or if it's documentary. They just want to get stuff out about science. So there really are grants all over the place for fiction.
Mhm.
Now, the second thing that you said, oh, this was so smart. Yes. So the crowdfunding, because I see small donors as separate from major donors, the crowdfunding, the way I like to use it with my clients is that we use the crowdfunding to talk to a whole lot of people, right? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And in there might be, as I gave you the example yesterday, we had this one crowdfunding campaign for an animated short for $25,000, and two people gave $2,500 each. Right, so they were already, by my standards, major donors, you know. But then I coached the filmmaker around going to those two donors, and they came in with more money. So they were already kind of showing themselves as major donors, and then they came in with more money. So with a crowdfunding campaign, I like to use the crowdfunding campaign to identify major donors. And major donors may give money to the crowdfunding campaign, or they may be somebody that you need to talk to separately, and they'll end up giving you a check. It's always sort of annoying when people don't want to give to a crowdfunding campaign, but if you're cultivating a major donor, then I don't think it's necessary to push them to give to the crowdfunding campaign. But major donors, the way you think about it is, in the pyramid. I was mentioning the pyramid yesterday. At the top, if you have people who are giving $25,000, $10,000, you treat them differently. So, if somebody's going to give you $50, you don't need to take them out for lunch. But if somebody's going to give you $25,000, maybe you take them out for lunch.
Right.
Right. So major donors you treat differently. And what I was saying before, how Mark is really good at this, is that the work with cultivating major donors is about building a relationship, keeping a relationship, building the relationship, and they'll keep coming back and keep giving and keep giving and keep giving. So that was a very, very smart thing that you caught there, Yvette.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm learning.
Yes. We'll talk
Okay.
next week or something.
Sure,
Yes.
will do. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so all right, now that we have invested some money into building our team, and when I say investing, I just mean something small. Maybe it's the $219 very annoying dollars for the foundation directory. I think they give 7 days free, so you can get it free for a few days if you want to do that. All right, number 4. I have called stage number 4 align with fundraising volunteers. So Leo, are you working with volunteers, or are you working with paid contractors? You're muted, by the way. You're muted, Leo. Leo, you're muted.
Okay, well, there we go. What I've done is committed to paying a commission.
Joe Policastro.
Oh, there's my assistant now.
You need
I
to
said
take it.
if we reach our first goal, I gave her like a very nice bonus, I'll call it.
Yes,
and
yes.
a tiered commission after that. So she's at the door, and I need to go get her in.
Go. Yes,
Okay,
go.
Yes.
Yes. I quit working on commission probably 20, 30 years ago. 30 years ago. But that is something that some people will agree to do. So you're paying somebody, but only if you raise money. But I think that the thing about fundraising volunteers is that, I think you should understand that there are people who volunteer to do fundraising all over the world by the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands every day. There are people who volunteer. And I told the story yesterday of my friend who came to me and said, I really want to learn about fundraising. I really want to learn what it is to be a philanthropist. But as I said, that's a pretty rare thing. But I do think that there are people who are very interested in helping out and volunteering. And I think that we make the mistake often of not really thinking about those people, thinking about who might think that it was fun to be involved in fundraising. So I had a client years ago. She was making her first short film. She had to have been the shyest person I've ever met. And she was an actress, which never makes any sense to me. I just can't understand how people can act when they're so shy. It didn't make any sense. And so we figured out she had 22 names in her phone. And but anyway, two of her friends were people who also were interested in acting, and they were also interested in producing. So I said to her, I suggested that she ask her friends to volunteer as fundraisers, and her friends were super excited about it. She was shocked. And so the two friends, I think they came to meet me one time because I know I met them. And so they, or maybe they came to one of my classes. That's probably what it was. And she did a crowdfunding campaign. They helped with the crowdfunding campaign. They raised money as part of the crowdfunding campaign. And in the middle of the campaign, she did a fundraising event. And so the three of them went to their favorite bar, maybe on a Wednesday night or something in the middle of the week when not many people were there. They went to this bar and they set up a couple of computers, and then they invited their friends, and they had between 30 and 40 people show up, and they just had a little evening at their favorite bar. So the bar was happy because they had customers, and the three producers were happy because they got to talk to people about the film. And that night and then they would walk people back to the computer and have them give at the crowdfunding campaign. And so it was about halfway through the crowdfunding campaign. It wasn't like they made much money. They made a few $100s. But the next day I had her send out an update for her crowdfunding campaign that said, "It was wonderful to have you all at our fundraising event last night." And then she raised all this much more money. And I think it was the FOMO donation, the fear of missing out donation, because they hadn't been at the fundraising event. It was very, very cool. And as I was saying yesterday, the only fundraising events I approve of do not cost you any money. Right? So the bar was free. The patrons paid for their own drinks, and they gave money to the campaign. And it was a great way to promote the campaign, but it was very fun. And as I said, I do not believe in spending money on fundraising events. So other volunteers, we don't really do this anymore. But years ago, I was working with a little nonprofit, and somebody gave us 2 tickets to a Madonna concert. And we decided to raffle them. And so I recruited a team of like 20 people to sell raffle tickets. And everybody got a book of raffle tickets. And I guess occasionally you see people do raffles, but if you have a fun prize, people get really excited about it. So of the 20 people who sold raffle tickets, probably about the high Paris, probably 8 to 12 of them didn't sell any tickets, and that's very common. And maybe they bought a book of tickets themselves or whatever. And then other people sold tickets. And then there was this one guy who sold all the tickets, came back for more, sold all those, came back for more, and sold a bunch more. He's passed away since then, but he was in his 70s at the time. Anyway, he just, I don't know what it was about these raffle tickets, but he loved selling the raffle tickets. So the next time that we had a really nice prize like that and wanted to do a raffle ticket, I put him in charge. Right? So now he's in charge of recruiting the raffle ticket sellers. And I just showed up at the event and watched, who got the raffle prizes. But I think that often we don't ask people to volunteer as fundraisers because we assume nobody likes fundraising. And it's just not true. It's just not true. And there are many, many people, especially for those of you who are more experienced fundraisers, filmmakers, that just to have the chance to work with you on a project is enough to have somebody want to volunteer. Just to have the opportunity to work alongside you. And how else are people going to learn anyway, right? So I would really invite people to join you in fundraising and invite a whole bunch of people, see who actually shows up. Because the one thing about volunteers and so on is that some people will show up and some people won't. But if you can create something for people to do. So in terms of working with volunteers, one thing that I would highly recommend is writing a job description and treating the volunteer just like somebody you were hiring and paying. And, and really treat them as if they were working for you for pay. So they know what their job description is, they know what they're supposed to do. And then this is a really key thing. And then you're going to lead this team. You're going to lead this team of volunteers. And I really learned this process when I was working at the YMCA. And I said I had my own fundraising team to run. But then I was also supposed to be in charge of the board's fundraising. And this is where I really learned some of my basic principles. Anybody who has run a nonprofit may have already witnessed this, but you often find a divide between the board and the staff. There's like a division and a conflict, and the staff is always like, well, the board's supposed to be raising money. Why aren't they raising any money? It's built into nonprofits. The problem is built in. The way that let's see, if you go back 100 years ago, how did you end up with a symphony in a city? Well, a bunch of rich people got together over their, tea and cakes, and they said, oh, we want to have a world-class symphony here. Why don't we all put some money in and we'll hire somebody to direct the symphony? That's how it used to be. Bunch of rich people. Then in kind of the 40s and 50s, artists would say, hey, I want to have a nonprofit, or I want to grow a local symphony or something like that. And they didn't have any money. So they created a board that was ideally rich people who would put the money in. But over time, it became that the artists who started the nonprofit would put a bunch of artists on their board and none of them had any money, right? But it still went back to that origin of that group of rich people who sat around and said, let's do something together, we'll put the money in, right? But current nonprofits are not started by a bunch of rich people. And so you end up with a board that isn't, and this is where I got my mantra, no fundraising without training and without support, right? So you end up with a board that's supposed to be fundraising for the organization, but they've never had any training and they've never had any support. The staff assumes that the board is going to raise funds. They don't. The staff is annoyed. The board is frustrated with the staff, and it's just a sort of cycle. It's very typical of nonprofits, very typical. So when I went to the YMCA, I said, okay, I'm going to start training the board. Right? We had training for the people who came and joined the big campaign, the 6-week campaign that we did, but there had never been any training for the board. So I started offering, I did a piece of training every board meeting. I offered training and I offered support. And the biggest support that I offered was a weekly meeting. So Friday at 10 a.m., my board members who were on the fundraising committee met with me. This was a long time ago. So was it on Zoom or phone? We were on the phone, I think. And we had a list of names, and, you know, John would ask these 5 people, and Jane would ask these 5 people. And I would run the meeting, and I would say, so John, how did it go with your 5 people this week? And he would report. Well, I called Mary and she wasn't there. And I called Siobhan, and she said, get back to me next week because she's in Hawaii till Monday. And then I remember this one board member, and she said, and then I went to her house and I still couldn't get hold of her. So we would just talk about how it was going. And it was a way to check in. It was a way to remind people. It was a way to bring them up. It was a way to have people working as a team. We'd say, hey, well, you know, you couldn't get hold of Siobhan. You know, shall I take over Siobhan? Because I think I could get through to her because I see her at work. Whatever it was, right? We would just go back and forth, go back and forth. Paris, go ahead.
You know, what you're saying makes so much sense, but it surprises me how people don't have monthly or weekly meetings within organizations, and how powerful it is when you do, and helps organize everything. I mean, even when I was working in film, I would go to every department every day, like in the morning, get everybody together and just have a general meeting. And then people come to me and say, you know what? We don't do this on other sets. I just couldn't believe it. You know, I was also in the military, you know that. So in the military,
Yeah,
we always have a meeting in the morning, and we make sure everybody knows what they're doing. So I
everyone's
can
on the
see this.
same page.
Yeah, everybody's on the same page. So I think that makes a lot of sense what you're saying. And one more thing, the best companies that were voted the best companies to work for always did that. When I used to work for a container, they would get together and they'd have a big meeting, and they would tell us their stock prices. They would tell us how well the store is
Wow.
doing. They would tell us how much money the
Wow.
store made. And they're like, you are part of us, and we're letting you know everything. And because of that openness, you really felt
Yes.
you were part of something, and you can see how you were actually making a difference.
Yes. Yes, that's great. And you were not here, but I was going around asking everybody what they took away from yesterday.
Okay, you got
Just
me.
take a little break.
Boom. What I got from yesterday was that there was more a method to fundraising than I knew about. I understand business. I understand there are a lot of things I do understand, but fundraising was something I didn't understand. You know, as far as the method of how to go about it, because you're not going to know everything. That's just impossible. But I really liked how you pointed out that the soft money first, like the local money and people you know, because I knew they were there. I just didn't think of it as fundraising, like you're saying. So as a result of that, I now have a more strategic approach and understanding of how to use that money that I can get from my friends, you know, or my family. And then I said, okay, this is fundraising. And then I'll use that part to help me even do more fundraising. And what I find, and I tell this to everybody, when I tell my family and friends, when I get money from them, I tell them what it's for. This is to help me do X, Y, and Z. And then a week later, a month later, I said, I did it. Because of that money you gave me, I was able to do X, Y, and Z. And that makes them so happy because they're investing in me. And when they see their investment has a return of success, then they feel really good about giving me whatever they gave me because it worked. And I tell everybody, even if you already did it before you asked the money, don't tell them. Just get the money. Then say, hey, because of that money, I was able to do this. It makes them so happy to see that the money they gave you was successful.
Yes, yes. While I was at the Y in San Francisco, I don't know why this weekend, I guess because the Y was where I really learned this team stuff. But they, oh, I just lost my train of thought. Thank you. Oh, yes. So they did this big research with all the Ys in Canada and all the Ys in the US. And so they did research on hundreds of thousands of donors. And when we got the report, I remember we were this like 2-day event, you know, we got the report back. And what the report found was that if you thank a donor within 24 to 48 hours of receiving their gift, they will give more the next time. And I think that's just an incredible piece of information, because most filmmakers I know never want to ask more than once. I'm like, no, you know. And so we discovered from this massive research that people give more when they've been thanked very quickly. And then what you're talking about is a next step, which is, this is how we spent your money, right? So you never want to ask somebody again before you've thanked them 7 times is the fundraising. This is what we say in the fundraising world. You thank somebody 7 times before you ask them again. But part of the thanking them is to thank them, telling them what you did with their money. That's the best thank you. You're right. That's fantastic. Thank you for that, Paris.
Yes.
All right, I'm going to go back to, where was I? Number 4, stage 4, aligning with fundraising volunteers. Oh, I unpinned myself. I see what I did. So aligning with fundraising volunteers. So anyway, I was there with the YMCA, and the board really gave very, very little money every year. And I was like, I just wasn't really concerned about it one way or another. I just said, no, I'm going to do whatever I can to increase giving. So for example, the chairman of the board wanted to go to all of the YMCA vendors. So we had a restaurant, you know, we had a hotel, we had a gym, we had 5 floors of a gym, we had, you know, we had all kinds of vendors that we worked with. So I put together a list of the vendors. I helped him write a letter requesting from the vendors. I printed out all the letters for him and envelopes and gave them to him so he could just sign them. And I gave him the phone numbers so he could follow up. That one board member raised $30,000 that year when he'd never raised anything above 5 before. He probably gave the 5 himself. Right. But what I was doing was providing him with all of this support so he could actually follow through with his idea, which was, oh, I think it would be a good idea to ask the vendors. You know, I had about 3 board members on the fundraising committee, and that was who I met with every Friday, Paris. That was just during the space of our 6-week campaign. We met every Friday. And we went through the names, and I made notes, and then I shared the spreadsheet with all the notes. So I just did everything that I could to support the board's efforts, partly by training and then partly by this kind of support, some of which was maybe like motivational support. People have started telling me in recent years that I'm a cheerleader. So it's that kind of, you know, support of like, yeah, we can do this, you know. But also other kinds of support where it's just more practical. Let me put a list together for you. Let me give you the names. Let me give you the numbers. Let me, you know, those kind of things. So that's where I developed my mantra: no fundraising without training or support. And then after that, when I went to youth radio, then I became sick, and then I was too sick to work for 7 years, but I did some consulting along the way. And every nonprofit, and even today when I work with a nonprofit, the first thing I do is I go in and do an audit of the nonprofit. What is the income that's coming in? Usually there's many, many areas that they're not fundraising in. And one of the things I do in the audit is I ask, how much do you invest in fundraising? And how much training does your board get? I've just joined the board of my favorite, my spiritual home. And they have 0 investment in fundraising. And for 30 years, they've had a board chair who said, we don't fundraise. The staff fundraises. And when they gave me the board orientation, I said, you know, that's not right. He said, what? I said, well, it says here under responsibilities, it says staff fundraising, board, there's no fundraising. I said, that's not how nonprofits work. And they were like, and I said, I just want to say, that's just not how how nonprofits work. The board is responsible for the fundraising, which is not to say that the staff isn't fundraising, but the board is responsible for the fundraising. So it's going to be very interesting because I'm not somebody who keeps my mouth shut. So we'll see how it goes with me being a board member. We'll see how it goes, you know. Mark, are you here? I'm just wondering if we could start a little early. Would that be okay?
Yeah, can you give me a minute? I just need to find a piece of paper.
Okay, he's going to find a piece of
Just
paper.
give me a moment.
All right. I asked Mark to come and be my guest today because Mark has been doing some very, very interesting work building a fundraising team. And I think that his experience is going to be very helpful. And just to give you a little bit of background on Mark, when I met him, he had made a documentary called Awakening in Taos. It's a wonderful, wonderful film about, Mark is based in New Mexico, about Mabel Dodge
Mabel
Lujan.
Dodge.
Mabel Dodge Lujan. And Mabel Dodge was a very, very wealthy New York socialite who was involved in kind of the bohemian community in New York back in the 19th century. And she had a vision about going to New Mexico. And Mark tells the story better, but anyway, she ended up in New Mexico and she married a Native American. So if you could imagine, 19th century, very rich white woman. 1917, she married?
She moved from Greenwich Village to New York in 1917.
But like I was telling the story yesterday about the very wealthy Japanese woman I knew. In the 60s or the 70s, she got a divorce and it was absolute scandal in her society. So I can't imagine what it was like back then for a very, very, very rich New Yorker to marry a Native American in New Mexico. And as a result of their marriage, they ended up creating the artist colony, which has been made extremely famous by Georgia O'Keeffe. When you see all Georgia O'Keeffe's paintings of the desert flowers, they were painted at this artist colony in Taos, New Mexico. And Mark's documentary is about this woman, Mabel Dodge Lujan. And now he's making a second documentary about their grandson, Bruce Standing Deer, who was an artist and a medicine carrier. Have you found your piece of paper, Mark?
I'm still looking for it. I should have done it earlier. I apologize.
That's okay. I had told you 3 and then I decided I wanted to start earlier. So it's my fault. But what's the piece of paper?
Well, I wanted to read the the quote that Jill had written.
Okay,
But-
I'll put it in the chat for you. How about that?
Oh, thank you.
Yes. So yes, yeah, I'll put it in the chat for you. I can find it. So yeah, Mark, I wanted to have you come on and talk a little bit about your experience with building a fundraising team and how that is going. So
I did
take
want
it
to
away.
thank you. I did want to address something that you had said, which was about thanking people, going back to your donors, thanking them 7 times is brilliant. Before you ask again, I had an experience where we had a small family foundation that had given us several large grants. And then they told me that they weren't interested in doing film anymore because it took too long and they were focusing on water rights in Taos. And so a fellow who was coaching me at the time on fundraising said, well, have you called them lately? I said, well, no, they're not doing films anymore. He says, just call them and thank them. So I called the wife, husband and wife, wealthy family, lovely foundation. And they had given us 2 grants for $25,000 so far. And I called up and I just said, hey, I just wanted to update you on what we're doing with the project and where we're at, and to thank you for all of the help that you've given us over the years. And I just want you to know we couldn't have gotten this far without you. And she said to me, so Mark, we've got some funding coming up here. If you're looking for money. I said, well, that's not why I called. I just called to update you and thank you, but I thought you weren't doing films anymore. And she said, we're not, but it would be awfully lovely to see you finish your film. And they gave us a $40,000 grant after they were out of that business. So thank you, 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 and thank you again is the way to do it. So I have on my first film, I had 3 women who were the producers and executive producers, and they really helped me raise funds. They're wealthy people, and they brought in their wealthy friends, and they were always thinking, well, let's ask so and so, let's ask so and so. And I've been working solo on the sequel to the first film, and I finally Joanne suggested to me that I build a team. And so I called all 3 of them up, and they said, sure, we'd love to be on your team. And I have one of these women. It was the first female stockbroker ever at Morgan Stanley 40 years ago. And she's really great at raising funds for people, and manages their portfolios, and nobody loses money most of the time. So, but as Joanne pointed out, everybody has their money.
Oh, wait, you're going too fast. So when you said, I want to have this team, then what
Right.
did you do? Because you put some structure in place for the team.
Oh.
What did you do?
Well, I called up and I set up a meeting, and I arranged for us to meet every week, which hasn't always been possible, but and there's the woman who was the executive producer on the last film. She's out there making phone calls, and the stockbroker.
What did you give them in terms of the goals and the tasks that needed to get done?
Well, I actually asked them what they would enjoy.
And
what
can
they
you
would
tell
enjoy.
everybody a little bit about this film? Because I did a vague job, but
Oh,
tell,
okay.
what is this team? What is their job? What is this team's job to do?
To help us raise funds to finish the new sequel.
Can you say what the film is?
So the film is called Man of Many Colors, which asks the question, what would you do if the government tried to erase your identity? And it's what happened to Blue Spruce Standing Deer, who's the great grandson of the main characters of the first documentary. He was recruited into the urban relocation program right out of high school. And what they did was they whisked him from Taos, New Mexico, where he was learning to be a medicine man in his father's footsteps. And they whisked him off to San Jose, California, where they trained him to be a welder. And after about 10 years of being kind of lost in the white man's world, he had a spiritual awakening and a vision, and heard a voice saying that it was time for him to come home and to accept his medicine from his father. And so the film deals with social justice issues about how the government tried to assimilate the Native Americans, and it's all about one man's search to reconnect with his identity, and to learn more about his original culture, which was they tried to erase. Where do you want me to go from here?
Then you created a structure in terms of the money that needs to be raised by when.
Oh, okay. So the structure was that our goal is to raise $150,000 by May so that we can finish the film, get it off to submit it to the Sundance Film Festival. And then there's a dramatic film based on the same characters that we've really been wanting to do for a long time. But we have to finish this second film before we could do that. So that was the structure, was that we needed to bring in about $10,000 a month in order to reach our goal by May. And we are now we're a fifth of the way through the production, and we're meeting regularly, and we invested, we had gotten some money at the beginning of the year, and we invested it into putting together a really powerful presentation reel, a fundraising teaser. It's not a trailer, it's a teaser. And then we actually went in and did the first 10 minutes of the film. So we've got a teaser that we can show to people to get them interested in the project. And then we can invite them either to a private screening or send them a link or have a house party. And they can see, we can upsell them and get them more involved. So you want me to talk about what happened with Jill?
Yeah. So I just wanted everybody to see what the foundation was of the team and what their job is, what they're working on. They have their marching orders, what the timing is before you tell this particular story, which I think is very interesting about this one particular team member. So go ahead.
So on the first film, Jill, who's the Morgan Stanley stockbroker and early adoptive feminist, she was so excited about the first project, and she was always talking to people about it. And so every time we'd go out to lunch, we'd run into three people. Oh, yeah, we're really interested in Jill's project. It was like, who the hell are you? And it was just Jill's project. And she had a lot of wealthy investors that she managed their funds. She's got to be very careful because she can't really ask them directly to donate because she's managing their funds, and there's a quid pro quo that they don't want to see happen. So whereas before she had been really enthusiastic about the project, she was there was some kind of resistance that I was getting with her. She wasn't able to make it to meetings, and then I had this conversation where she said, well, there's got to be a better way to raise money than asking people for money.
DNA new number.
And Joanne said, no, if you don't ask, you don't get. So she said, and Joanne said, it's not about the money. It's about the relationship. It's about the impact of the piece. And I said, well, that's the name of Jill's book. It's not about the money. It's about a new paradigm for investing. And Joanne went online and found this, the book's for sale on Amazon. And there was a written paragraph that was very, very profound. And would you like me to read this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, read it.
So finances, this is what she wrote about her own book. Finance is in the midst of a major shift, a new paradigm based on intuition, new brain research, and creating win-win scenarios is overtaking the former financial landscape. Longtime advisor Jill Drinkwater relates how the change is experienced through investing. The author's both practice a philosophy encouraging people to approach every aspect of their life integrated with their intuition. They seek the clarity in all areas of life so that they're no longer run by the old paradigm that has led to, I'm sorry. So the old paradigm is kind of dog eat dog, I win, you lose. That paradigm is in its death throes. It's exclusive, divisive, separatist, self-serving, and highly destructive to individual businesses and countries. The only way we'll experience greater success in all of our endeavors is by relinquishing our hold on the old and replacing it with a more holistic, intuitive-based, creative, and fluid paradigm. So Joanne said, when you meet with her, why don't you read her what she wrote? And so I met her for dinner, and I said, we were looking, we found I thought it was a review, but apparently it's something that she actually wrote. I said, and I read this to her, and I said, what if we use the new paradigm as the way to raise funds for the film? What if we use your whole concept of using intuition and being on a more spiritual bent? And she because she was making all these excuses for not fundraising, and now it was like, well, why don't you just share your enthusiasm about this new way of being, and we'll use your paradigm to raise funds. Well, it was like the lights went on in the room. She got totally lit up. She was really excited, really enthusiastic, and going like, wow, we could do this with that. And suddenly Joanne had used the term, everybody has their money shit, which is they have their resistances to and their fears about money. And even though she had this really new paradigm way of thinking about things, when it came to actually asking people, she was coming up against her old issues. And so now she's on fire. She feels she can't ask people to invest, but she can invite them to come to the presentation. So it's not her asking them to get money, it's them coming to see what she wants to share with them. And it's just really.
Can you say about what that event is? Can you just share with what? So
we were very successful a few years ago. We did a number of, I'll call them house parties, but my executive producer and her husband own 7 different restaurants in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and they all have big group rooms. And one of them in particular has a video projector and a sound system that's set up for running videos. So what we're doing now is so she will host the event and cater it, and we'll invite several hundred people, as many as we can get, to come to the event. And it'll be catered, and there'll be mingling, and then we'll show either one or both of the videos.
One.
Just one?
Sorry.
Well, so then we should send them the teaser, the 4-minute teaser first, and then no?
No. But go ahead, keep going.
Okay, well, as you see, it's unfolding.
I hope everybody got something out of the story. I just think it's a fantastic story. And actually, I was thinking, as you were coming to the end there, I was thinking, so you have these 3 women who are on your team. We call them Charlie's Angels. Katie's Angels. We call them Katie's Angels. And then Mark's job is to provide the structure, keep it moving. Because otherwise, everybody's busy. It's the 21st century. What can you say? But
this process does really well with the great filmmaker success coach.
Yes, but so you have these three women who you've already
Mhm.
worked with, who already know you for years, but then, you know, they're all asking people, and then you're having an event, which is another donor who's the owner of the restaurants, and then all the people who come. It's like this constant building of a team. The team gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then
Right.
one of the things that is so important about your films is that they, you know, New Mexico is not a place that, well, until recently has had tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of films, right?
Right.
So
Well,
you know, there's a local pride with the fact that there's this New Mexico film.
There's also a distinguishing thing about my films, and that is that their marketing, there's rebates and tax incentives to get film companies to come here, but they're all doing the Lone Ranger or Cowboys and Aliens, and all these different films that where they're shooting New Mexico as Montana or as Colorado, and no one was doing any films in New Mexico that were stories based about people who live or lived in New Mexico. And there's this great history, and we keep finding these independent women who are early adoptive feminists who came to New Mexico at the turn of the century and did incredible things with artists and art patrons and were writers. And so there's a lot of self-esteem for New Mexicans. It's a local film about local people and local stories, and it's all true. And fortunately, the way Taos has been built over the last 200 years, any day of the week you could find a location in Taos that you could shoot as 1917.
Yeah, I just, you know, when clients start working with me, I have these recorded modules that they listen to, and the last one is called Community. And I find that, you know, filmmakers don't like the word networking, they don't like the word, but they like the word community. But every film is this opportunity to build community. And Mark happens to be very good at building this community with these donors and people, wealthy people. You know, everybody has their, as I said, favorite type of fundraising, but Mark is very good at this. But it's the idea of building that community. And even if you're making your first short film, one of the reasons that I love to use crowdfunding is because it's a way of building community. You know, when I was saying about my client, the shyest woman I've ever met, you know, and she got her two friends involved, and then they raised some money. And she told me that the first day that she was on the set, and when she started working with me, she was terrified about the idea of making a film. She wanted to make a film, but she was terrified. But ultimately, when she went to the first day of being on her set, she told me that she didn't feel scared at all because she felt all this love and support from all the people who'd given to her campaign.
And people get really, they take ownership of a project. When somebody takes ownership, if they're working with you as a volunteer or even as a paid member, if they feel like it's their project, they want to do their best work. And one of the things, my recent things that happened was I ran into a chiropractor who over the years gave us maybe $10, $25 donations. And I ran into him and I said, by the way, the film has been broadcast 1,700 times on PBS. And he said, when did we finish that film? And I said, it's been about 5 years. He goes, yeah, it has. I said, but you should find out about our new project. And he'd go, oh, okay.
Fantastic, fantastic. No, this whole idea of building community as, you know, one of the things, the reason I have that module there is because I think a lot of filmmakers, especially fiction filmmakers, they're used to a certain, you know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks period that they're going to be shooting, and they build community in that time frame. But the community is so much bigger than that. You know, the community is so much bigger than the people who are on set. You know, it's the accountant or the lawyer and the donors and the people who supported the crowdfunding, the people who come to the movie, all of these people, all part of this movie, and every single filmmaker is creating this community around this film. And in your case, it's continued for 5 years, and there's more screenings and more screenings and more, you know, and more people seeing it, and the community is expanding and growing. It's just fantastic. Yes.
I just wanted to add that community building is so important to independent filmmakers. I never understood working with people. They get together, they make a film, they disappear, and they never talk to each other again. And then you got to start all over again. And my
That's
God,
right.
what is the difficulty of trying to get the right people together again out of nowhere? Whether it's to raise money or this or that, I never liked that. I hated that, to be honest with you. So whenever I was with a group, and everybody knows, I'm always a guy like, hey, let's get together, let's have lunch, let's become friends. I want to build a community that lasts forever. And it's funny, there's a documentary that was done by a French documentarist on my film, The Black Ninja. I'll give you the link.
Oh,
But in that
yes.
documentary, because she was studying the difficulty of making a film from a crew that was multinational, African-American, you know, Black women and so forth. And she was like, how difficult is it for you guys to make a film in America? So that was her documentary, and we were her
Wow.
subject. But in the film, I kept saying, I want to build a future with these people. I want to build a community so that it gets easier and easier. And that's with the money, the talent, the skill, locations, doesn't matter what it is, you know, the restaurants for the food, the materials to build the dresses.
Yes.
If they like us and we know them and we invite them in, we put them in credits and we make them feel like they're part of the team, then they look forward to the next one. I mean, I have people saying, Parrish, you want to use my restaurant? Come anytime, man. You can have the whole basement. It's got this huge basement. Just come down here. It's yours for free.
We got a grant 2 years in a row from New Mexico Arts, which is the National Foundation for the Arts, funds on a state level, and they gave us a grant to have in the 7 major cities of New Mexico to have premieres for the film so that all the communities could see it, and it covered the venue, it covered the accommodations for our cast and crew to come. So we had about 10 different screening events where the actors and the crew members were all on the stage. There were like 20 of us, and there was just this great team building, and people just kept showing up for the next couple of years, really excited for the opportunity. So thank you for bringing that up.
Awesome.
You know,
Yeah.
as part of the team building, I'd like to include the actors too. A lot of times we keep the actors at a distance. We don't, you know, they come in and they disappear. I don't do that. You know, when the actors come and say, hey guys, you got 2 hours, you can relax, but you want to help with this? You want to help with the food a little bit? You want to do something else? Then once they get involved, they actually become friends with the crews. And I say, you know what? The best thing an actor can do is become friends with the crew and the people, because then you'll get new jobs.
That's right. That's right. One of my favorite filmmakers is John Sayles. I got to meet him many years ago. It must be 35, 36 years ago. And he said that, well, 2 things he said about team. One was he said after he made his first film, he realized that he was either going to have to learn fundraising or get a new set of friends. Everybody working for free on his first film. And then the other thing that he does is that he basically works with the same crew on every movie. And I'm sure it's changed over 36 years, but his producing partner is his relationship partner in life. And they work with the same crew over and over and over and over again.
I gotta add this one thing to this. When I was learning about filmmaking, they were telling independent filmmakers always burn bridges. Like when they ask for money from their family and their friends and everybody, and they give them all this money, they make a film, and whatever happens, the film doesn't work or something happens, they don't know how to connect with their family and friends. Then they were saying they always burn their bridges on their first film, and they got to start all over again with all new friends and all new family. And I'm like, that's not a good idea. You
No,
got to
it's
figure
not
out,
good.
don't burn the bridges. I don't. And it was like assume that that's going to happen. You're going to beg for money, and then nobody's going to help you again.
There's
Yeah,
a great
yeah.
story about Clint Eastwood. He always uses the same crew. And they were doing this film, they did a film about Hiroshima from the US's standpoint. And they wanted to do a second film about the same war from the Japanese standpoint. So he got together with his crew and they figured out a way to save enough money on the first film that they'd have money to do the second film. Because they all just knew what they were doing and they all worked together and they were all committed to doing the second film.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Paris. And thank you so much, Mark. I just think that the way you have, built this team has been very, very, very wonderful to watch. And
Thank you.
And a lot of fun,
Fun.
just more fun.
It's family. We're family now.
Yeah. And it really is. I think that this is the thing that a lot of people miss. And I was saying this earlier to Leo, that not everybody wants to be involved in a film by being on the set. That isn't the place for everybody. There are plenty of people who will be thrilled to be involved in a film just by giving money or just by raising money. Because as you have already seen, there are people who they're convinced it's their film because they've raised the money for it. And they're enjoying that experience, of doing that. And for the creatives, and all of my clients are creatives who've accepted the fact that they need to raise money. There's not going to be somebody out there on a white horse who's going to come in and raise the money for them, that my clients have accepted they're going to raise money. But the truth is that there are other people who will enjoy doing that with you. And it's just a mindset shift to get around. So thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me.
Yeah. Oh, and when I keep saying about no on the 10 minutes, it's not a marketing piece. It's a 10 minutes of your film. It's not for marketing. The marketing piece is the 3-minute film teaser.
But wait a minute. So
And you don't want to be at an event and be showing 8 minutes. You remember when we were with the Violins of Hope and the piece was 5.5 minutes, and I was sitting there in the audience with all these people and it was too long. Don't make people sit and watch 8 or 10 minutes. It's too long.
Okay.
It's too long. Keep to the 3. All right. Okay. I'm going to move into step 5. And Shelley, since you were not here yesterday, I just wanted to let you know. So yesterday, everybody had a little exercise to do. And the exercise was this. There are 5 questions. 3 questions. One is, how much do you need to raise in 2024? How much in 5 years? And the way we did it yesterday, we were kind of more about vision, and then they were asked, in 2024, the money you're going to raise, what are your favorite first, second, and third ways of raising money? What are your favorite first, second, and third ways of raising money? So once you have the answers to those questions, you'll be caught up with everybody else who was here yesterday. All right. So I'm going to move along to the 5th stage, which is about hiring fundraising help. So, so far, everything that I've talked about all yesterday and all today has all been about still being on your own, but expanding your team. And so now we're going to talk about actually spending money on hiring fundraising help. And so there are some ways to go about building this that are perhaps more sensible than other ways. So once you get to, if you're running an organization or you get to sort of $100,000 a year, it's really time for you to have some help. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and she has like a $500,000 a year organization. She teaches music, and she said, I can't afford to hire anybody. I was like, well, okay. Now she was just telling me the other day, she's got 3 full-time staff and 2 part-time people, and they're all from the Philippines, and she's paying them like a few dollars an hour. So obviously you can start with somebody part-time. And I mentioned earlier, you could start with somebody at, say, 4 hours a week. So 4 hours a week is a half a day, right? If you had somebody a half a day, what could you do? What could you work on, with that person? Maybe they do research for you. Maybe they, like I was saying about that job I did for the board, I made the list of all the vendors. We worked on a letter together. We printed all of the letters. I printed all the envelopes. I put the stamps on. I mailed them all off. And then he did the follow-up phone calls. So there are all kinds of things like this that you could hire somebody to help you with. And that person isn't necessarily somebody who's trained, right? I have a VA that I use when I'm doing research, and I got her off Fiverr. And she wasn't particularly anybody who knew anything about fundraising research, but I've taught her techniques over time. And so if I call her up tomorrow, and she would be able to get me some lists. So a part-time person is a good way to start. And it's also, if you're working with somebody and you have them, say, for 4 hours, it's a way to commit to you spending 4 hours, right? If you're working with that person, you could even just be doing like co-working. You could have one person on Zoom, the other person on Zoom, and you're working on something at the same time, but it means now you're committed to 4 hours a week. And I think that's a good place to start. Like I was saying earlier to Mark, if he puts one proposal a month in somewhere, that's not going to take more than 4 hours, ideally. Actually, I was very proud of Mark one time. He told me that he had found out about this grant and he applied for it the next day. The deadline was the next day. And I was like, that's exactly where I want my clients to get, where they have a grant proposal that is really good. We work on it once a year. Maybe we spend a month, 6 weeks making it as good as possible. And then we just cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste. So it's a way to radically reduce the amount of grant writing that a filmmaker is doing by only working on it once a year or once every 6 months. Mark, you going to say something?
There's a lot of the film grant organizations have standardized a form for their grants, and it's structured the same. So if you can find the ones that are using that, then it makes it really easy for you to just cut and paste and customize where you need to.
It's called the Documentary Core application.
Correct.
And many film organizations have chosen to use the Documentary Core application, so you don't have to keep revising your grants. But I think you always have to account for some time to revise your grant. You can't just have a grant proposal and then just send it to everybody. That's not going to work. But again, it's something that you could have help with. So you have written the grant, you've worked on it, and then you have somebody that you've hired for 4 hours a week, and you have them work on it. One of my clients has a full-time assistant, and I've trained her now over time to work the grants in a certain way. So my client Thomas Allen Harris, we're working on a documentary right now, and we've just passed the $1 million mark with our fundraising on this documentary. But when, like, I found a couple of new foundations the other day that he had never heard of, and so if they have a formal grant writing process, I'll say to her, Quentin, can you prepare this grant for us? And then when we meet, she has all the questions in a Google Doc. She can do a lot of, cutting and pasting. Like if it's a bio for Thomas, it's already in there. And then all we have to do is a final rewrite on that. And she's learned how to do that. So all we're doing is putting the finishing touches or answering new questions that we didn't answer before, that kind of thing. So in that way, an assistant, can really help with that kind of thing. It took a time to train her. She's super smart, so it's not that. It took a time to train her, but now there's no lag time. I say, this is the grant we're applying for, and it's all ready for us to go. Years ago, when grants were not, everything was not online, I used to have one of those plastic things, those plastic things where you put shoes? You know what I'm talking about? You put the shoes. So I had that on my wall, and then I had my bio in there, my budget for 2023, my budget for 2024, my budget for 2025, all of that stuff. And so when we made a grant, I might write something about this, something about it, and then all of those attachments had to be on there, right? So I would just go through, I had them all organized like that. Nowadays, we don't do any of that. It's all online. You will never have the pleasure of showing up somewhere with 36 copies of a grant. Thank the Lord, but that's the kind of thing I used to do. And so now what we want to do is in that kind of grant writing process is to reduce the amount of time we're spending redoing things. Right. So that's a very, very important thing, because I've met so many documentary filmmakers who have burned themselves out on grant writing, and there's just no reason to. There's just no reason to do that at all. But it's all about strategy and efficiency with time. So let's say you could get to the point where you could really have somebody part-time, 20 hours a week would be great, to have somebody working part-time. Then you can expand the number of places you apply. So maybe if there's just one of you, you can get one application amount about a month. Maybe if there's two of you, can get out two, and you could have somebody help you find more places to apply to. You could have somebody help you with follow-up. If I were writing to a number of foundations, I might have a part-time person now follow up and make a phone call and ask if they have received the application, the letter of intent or whatever it is. So you could have somebody do that kind of follow-up. We'll often have an assistant be the one to set up meetings. I just saw some things as we've been talking coming in from Thomas. So I gave him this idea about this foundation. He reached out to them on LinkedIn. They wrote back, they want a meeting, and then the assistant can set up the meeting. Emily knows this. I'm not allowed to touch my calendar. If I'm handling my calendar, it'll be a mess. So Emily handles my calendar, all my meetings, everything is she handles all of that. That's why I'm always saying to people, ask Emily, ask Emily, ask Emily. Ask Emily. So somebody will say something about time and my brain goes, ask Emily.
It's very true, very true. There have been times Joanne's like, oh, I forgot to put, oh, but there's something already in that slot that I scheduled the meeting for. And I'm like,
It's a mess. It's a
We in the
mess.
same boat, Joanne. Same boat.
Oh my God, I'm just like, I have to really try to be careful and just say, I can't schedule that. I gotta ask Emily. It just, it's like, it's not good. So, and that's another way to think of an assistant. An assistant is somebody who's they're good at things that you're not good at. Emily's great at a whole ton of things that I'm just like, I don't know, anything to do with graphic design, I'm hopeless. So when you get to the point where you can have a part-time person, they can be taking care of things that you're not good at, or to sort of expand. Now, if you get to the point where you can hire a full-time person, I was consulting with I did my virtual fundraising team with this organization called Catchlight, and they had an executive director who was very, very, very good, but she wasn't a fundraising expert, and she had a full-time grant writer. And so that's one way to go with a first step with a full-time person. She had a full-time grant writer, and that was very smart, because a lot of times executive directors won't invest money. I've said this over and over again. They won't invest money in fundraising. But really, if you're going to make a first hire, from my perspective, it should be a fundraiser. Because a fundraiser, let's say you hire a fundraiser full-time, and that fundraiser can bring in $400,000 a year. You're not paying them $400,000 a year, When I moved to California, and this was, when did I move to California? Oh, 2005, I think it was 2005. And I wasn't a grant writer. I was a step above that. I was a one-stop development shop. So I did all the different types of fundraising. I did capital campaign, major donors, grant writing, foundation relations. I did everything. And my salary started back then at $70,000. And by the time I left that field, it was about $95,000. But, in my first job at the Y, I was responsible for the capital campaign for 38 million, which I say that didn't actually ever happen, but I got that 75,000 from Kresge. I had a grant writing goal of 250,000. I brought in 251,000, and then I was responsible for all the individual donors, which was about 250,000. So I was bringing in $600,000 or so in my first year. So $70,000 salary, that's worth it, right? Now, the second year that I was there, I brought in the 250,000 from the individual donors. I brought in other stuff for the capital campaign, and I brought in 749,000 from grants. Right. So again, that investment of $75,000 is paying off in all this. When I went to youth radio, I think I was earning 95,000, but I brought in 2.2 million, not 2.2. I brought in $2 million in 5 months. Right. So if you have a fundraiser who actually can raise money, that investment is designed to bring in money. Right. So if today you could spend $75,000 on a full-time person and they could bring in $400,000 or $500,000, wouldn't that be a worthwhile investment? Right? What if they could bring in $1 million? What if they could bring in $2 million? what would happen, Paris, go ahead.
And how I had so many friends of mine who tried to do that, hire a fundraiser, and so many times I hired someone who really didn't know what they were doing, and they were so disappointed. And I would ask them, well, how much did you pay them? $3,000. I'm like, I have no idea what fundraiser that I know you could pay $3,000 for, but they just didn't know how to choose the appropriate person for the job. That seemed to be a common case. So I think that's a good question.
I think it's a great question. And the thing is that, like, for example, when I was talking about the grant writer, so the grant writer knows how to do one kind of fundraising, right? One kind of fundraising. As a one-stop development shop, my job was to do all the kinds of fundraising. Okay. And even then, I went to the Y, which has thousands of members. We had a senior center. We had hundreds of members who were seniors, and they had no planned giving program. You know how much it costs to set up a planned giving program? Zero. Does everyone know what planned giving is? Does anybody know? Planned giving is when people leave money in their estates it tends to be to brick and mortar organizations, something like a Y where there's a building and there's, but people leave money in their estates. We had no planned giving program, and we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of seniors who were members of the Y. People who've been members of the Y for 60 years. So I instituted a planned giving program, costs absolutely nothing. And I did that every nonprofit that I work for. Let's set up a planned giving program. I did it at my spiritual home. Let's set up a planned giving program. People are dying. People are dying every day, and Paris, what did you say? You're not dying.
No, I said, not me.
No, not you, not me, not me either. But so I think that there's probably a difference in price between a grant writer and a one-stop development shop. So if you're going to hire a single person, and you're thinking a grant writer, maybe you could get a grant writer for $50,000 a year. If you're going to get a one-stop development shop that can handle all the different kinds of grant, and I was handling capital campaigns as well, right? But that would be a bit more. And I said, I haven't had a full-time job for years and years and years, so I don't know. But anyway, 75,000, 85,000, that kind of thing. But it's the return that you want to be interested in, right? My boss at the Y, as I said, I raised 251,000 first year I was there. And, I just didn't think anything of it. She told me that my goal was 250,000. So I raised 251, right? Oh, I think I told you yesterday, she had hired this consultant who had been a director of development before, because my boss, Carmela, assumed that because I didn't have relationships with all the foundations, that would somehow be a detriment, and we needed somebody who was local and knew them, all that. And something very weird happened. I couldn't understand it. I didn't know what was going on, but Carmela was being very strange, treating me very weird. And finally, this lady who was lovely, she said, let's go out for lunch. So we go out for lunch one day. She said, Carmela's really concerned. And I said, well, what's she concerned about? Well, she's concerned that you're lying about the work you're doing. I was like, really? I've never lied to anybody in my life. What do you mean? She thinks I'm lying. Well, she thinks you're lying about the number of grants you're doing, the amount of money that you're asking. I was like, she thinks I'm lying? Why would she think that? Well, the last person who had this job made up a whole bunch of stuff and didn't raise any money at all. I was like, oh my God, wow. So I took that information in, and I tried to show Carmela this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing. Can you sign on? I'd take things to her could you look over this before I send it, just to show her that I was really doing the work. But when I ended up with the 251,000, Carmela was shocked. Nobody in the job had ever raised $200,000 before. And she just couldn't believe that I was really doing what I said I was doing. But all the time I was like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, The next year, I raised $749,000. And she never, ever got off my case that I wasn't applying to more places. And I'm like, why do I need to apply for more grants? I'm tripling the goal. Why do you want me to write more grants? But she on my case, all the time. Got to write more grants, got to write more grants. And then I raised the 749,000 and she said, well, what would you like to do? Would you like me to spend it this year? Or would you like me to save it for this year and next year? I said, I would like to be on the diversity committee. And she said, no. So I left. I said, all I want is to be on the diversity committee. And she said, no, you're too busy raising money. So that's why I left. So I went to my next job and I was a one-stop development shop at Youth Radio. But my specific task was a capital campaign and raising $5 million. And as I said, I was only there for 5 months and I raised $2 million. But I didn't know that the day they let me go, I didn't know that. But eventually it became clear that I had raised $2 million and that was purely grant writing. But I was in charge of special event fundraisers. I initiated an individual donor campaign, but not by getting the donors, but by getting Kresge to give the money that had a match that said you have to do an individual donor campaign, right? That was the stick. So I knew that I had got that in place. And we also did a lot of corporate sponsorship and foundations. And so I just sat at my computer and I wrote grants. I wrote $2 million in 5 months. So the investment has to be about bringing the money in, but for an executive director to be able to hand off some of the fundraising, I think is the first thing that you should be thinking about, the very first thing, more than a director of programming because unless those positions are also bringing in income. But what you want to be able to do is multiply yourself so that you can be bringing in more money. And so many people don't think about it. I met this lovely woman and she had been working on her nonprofit for about 40 years. And she trained therapists in specifically to do with trauma training. And the budget for her nonprofit was $61,000 after 40 years. And she had this fabulous mission. And I could have transformed that organization, but she could not invest in fundraising. So it's just her doing a little like, oh, we need this money. She could not get past this idea of, I'm working flat out to make my $61,000 a year. So I would say a part-time person, then a full-time, and if you can get up to, I would say something like 75,000. It depends where you live in the country, and I just said I'd have to check in and see what those numbers are. But to have a full-time person who can do all the different types of fundraising, and you'd have to really find that out in an interview. Because when you're talking to people who say they can fundraise, there are some things you need to actually find out. Can you fundraise? Have you fundraised? What experience do you have? Do you have experience closing major donor gifts? Do you have experience writing grants? Do you have experience getting grants? My rate when I was at the YMCA was 2 for 1. Every 2 grants I wrote, I got 1. That's unheard of. raising $2 million for a $2.2 million organization in 5 months is unheard of. I was told over and over again I was lying by people over and over again, because it's just unheard of that people can raise that kind of money. But you know, if you have somebody who can do that, then that's what you want for your organization. And then, you know, what I offer is I have 2 ways that I work. I work with my clients and I teach my clients how to fundraise. You know, last year, Mark wanted to go on this thing with his film, Awakening in Taos, to have it go to the next level on PBS. And we had to raise $65,000 for that particular project. So we set out and did that. All my clients are raising money. All my clients are raising money. Emily launched her crowdfunding campaign. Look, put your crowdfunding campaign in the chat, Emily. Emily launched her crowdfunding campaign this week. So I teach people how to raise money, and the idea is that you learn how to better raise money and raise more money. That's the idea. So I'm just trying to download my decades of experience into you, so you can do the work. In the coaching world, that's called a done with you program. I'm helping you. But then I have this other program called the virtual fundraising team. And in my virtual fundraising team, I work with you very closely, but I bring in a team of people who will actually take on the fundraising for you. And there's a grant writer that I love to work with. She's based in Philadelphia. Research, corporate sponsorship, foundations, all of these different things. And what I'm trying to do is replicate what it would be like if you were at a point where you're like, I can't do all this by myself anymore. I've got to expand. I've got to bring somebody on, and for a price way less than hiring a person for a year, my team can get to the point that that person could get in 1 year in the space of 3 months. So I call it my virtual fundraising team, and I love to do it because I have a coach, and he was asking me about this program and what it was that I liked about it. I said, well, I like raising money, you know, but what we found out was that what I really liked was I really liked to be part of a team, you know. Under normal circumstances, it's me and Emily and then all my clients. But when I'm running a virtual fundraising team, I have all these other people and I run a team, and I really, really enjoy it. And you know, it's a way of putting systems in place, because that's another thing. I'm a builder. I had a friend who used to say, well, you're a builder, Joanne. You're not a manager, you're a builder. So when an organization has maybe had one type of fundraising in place, they don't necessarily have the systems for all of the different types of fundraising. So if you put a one-stop development shop in place for a year, and they could build even a planned giving program, they could build for foundations, build for corporate sponsorships, build all these things. It tends to take about a year. And I do it for way less money, way faster. And then when all those systems are in place, then people who are less skilled can just keep moving forward with all of those different areas, because everything is already in place, and they can have a path that they can follow, right? They don't have to figure it out by themselves. That's the part that a more junior person wouldn't know. So yes, there's Emily's crowdfunding campaign for her film. Yeah, I would love to talk to you about my virtual fundraising team. I'm going to be speaking about it at the end of April on a podcast for fundraisers that's sponsored by Donor Search, which is a fundraising software. Oh, I didn't even talk about that. So yeah, if you would like to talk about hiring my virtual fundraising team, that would be great. If you would like to work with me and I will teach you how to do the fundraising, that's great too. So please talk to me about that. All right, so I'm going to have Shelley come and see if she wants to share with us the answers to the questions. You don't have to if you don't want to, but if you would like to come and share with us the answers to the questions, that would be great. We all did this yesterday, Shelley.
Yes, I'm happy to. I have to say thank you so much. I'm taking in a lot, and I could tell you that we're a film company. We've made a number of films, documentary films. Each one that has gone into film festivals has always come out a winner, which is very rewarding in its own sense. They're very diversified, and they also very often close doors because of the subject matters that we are actually
what do you mean they close doors?
Well, for instance, yes, of course, what we have, I met Hafiz Farid, who is my actual partner in filmmaking. We're together, talk about Paris, you were saying about family, the team, building the team, and how do people dispense after just one film? You know, how do you let go? And we never could. So we're together almost 20 years, and we are skeletal. We're 4 people, and it's rough. Fundraising probably is the only thing that we've never really even invested in, because we're so hungry to make these films, and they're so timely, and we have opportunities that we never really, we say we're out of pocket. People have done, you know, certainly pro bono. I mean, just great people have come into our lives. We've been very blessed, whether it's a cinematographer, whether it's a sound engineer, whomever. And we will, you know, pay as we can. And then when we can't, you know, it's really been very supportive community to help us. So this is like extremely important, as we all are feeling, I'm sure, sitting in this room together. And we have failed at it because we don't do it. So I don't want to use the word fail. We have neglected.
Haven't tried, which is different.
Well, because we really haven't. We really haven't. And now we're at a point where we have like 5 films done, and we need to really get it out there. We need the licensing. We need to get it completely okay, because everything we're doing, we do a lot of libraries, universities. We've been all over. We never charge for the audience, ever. We will be sponsored, have an honorarium, but our whole mantra was just never charge the people, the viewers, and that's really what we've done. So it is a hardship now. I mean, we're paying a big price for it because we're, you know, we're at a stalemate with it, and they're beautiful. They're very powerful, riveting, graphic, and important films. So how much do you need to raise now was your first question, I believe.
In 2024, yeah.
Yes, well, so that film, budgeting, looks like it's probably $600,000 with the archival materials and whatnot, maybe more. The most recent film, which is what I'm referring to now, is called Two Sons of Georgia, SUNS rather than SONS. And it's about the relationship that really has not been publicly known, about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that was the father of the Nation of Islam, and Martin Luther King and the real meeting. People have somehow misinformation about somehow Malcolm X and Martin Luther King having had that relationship, when in fact the two ideologies of both these men, although quite different, when they did meet and when they did have their conversations, we learn of really how much both were doing for the love of their people. And it's an incredibly moving film with hope in it. So that is where, with it, because of the material, and by the way, this story is told by actually Elijah Muhammad and Martin Luther King, because we have research beyond research. We have a great analyst, research analyst, who has been just incredible, pulling out from archival material things that have not been actually available. And then, of course, from the FBI and others that have come now public domain, it's expensive, the footage, the materials. So I'm saying easily, you know, even probably 750,000 maybe at the end of the day, but I'm just saying that where we are now, we think anywhere between, I would say 550, 600 and 750 a mil for the film. Another film is we had the blessing to work with Maya Angelou before her passing, about 3 years before she died, on a beautiful documentary called Reflection of a Blessed Soul. Important because all of these individuals, give it very little time, will be off the map of knowing. Our children will never know of these individuals if we continue going the way we are. So these documentary films, history is really critical thinking, whatever you want to call it. American history is really important, which we say African American history. Well, it's all our history. And we need to really have this alive and out there. Not just ours,
What did
but
you-
all.
What
Yeah,
did
sorry.
you put for your number for 5 years? What number did you put?
Well, the way we work, which is amazingly quickly, we've taken this film and we've completed it less than a year, about a year actually, with all the work. So if we could just, all of our Scott list that has so many films that we would love to do, a film a year, if we could. I mean, I would say 5 mil, just, you know, top line.
Right,
just
5
at
films,
the end of the
5 years.
5 films, you know, whatever.
And I know you didn't hear yesterday, but what did you pick as your 1, 2, and 3 favorite ways to fundraise? I know you said you haven't done fundraising, so I'm asking you a bit of a silly question, but we all played this game yesterday.
Yes, no,
I
I know,
had
it's
the
a
most
great,
fun. I had the most fun with the game, but
well, because that makes me so nervous to begin with, I'm trying to be lighthearted about it, and that's even heavy to
Yes.
do. But just anybody who has money that I know, to just ask them for the money.
yes, so the
would
major
be the
donors. be
major
one,
donors.
right?
Yeah, would be my number one
Donors.
for sure. My number 2 would be, you know, I have to say, I would probably lean to crowdfunding, which is really on our agenda. Put it out there. And I think what you said, Joanne, is actually very smart, is when you have your donors that make the donations, check out who's making the donations that's over the $50, $100,
Right.
be it $2,500. Those are people who are
Right.
very big for crowdfunding. So I would be
Yes.
investigative about that. The third, I mean, I guess it has to, I don't know, play the lottery.
That is not a fundraising strategy, but
Yeah, I know. And, you know, I think the third would probably, and it's important. I think you simplify the grant writing so well that it really probably is the impetus to really look at that in a more serious way too. We're going to go for a grant and we're working on right now. There's a deadline May 1st, and that's the Levine Ken Burns grant. And that's a 250,000, and there's also second is like 50,000, and that's what we're working on right now.
Great. So the one little bit of feedback I would give you is just a little thing, is I would put the crowdfunding first and the major donors second. Because what I found is for people who are beginners at fundraising, crowdfunding is fantastic. You know, it's just a great way to start. I wouldn't go for any big numbers or anything like that. 25,000, 30,000. I've had people raise more money, but we would have to talk about it. But 25,000, and just start talking to people, get used to it, get used to talking to people about money. It's a really great tool, right? And then start looking at major donors, how that comes out, because by then you'll be very practiced at pitching and talking, and you're more used to the conversation about money. Because what I find is that when I work with my clients, one of the things that we're doing is becoming comfortable talking about money. Right now, you're not comfortable talking about money.
Not at all.
Money is like, woo, you know. So we get comfortable talking about money because, as Mark was telling in his story, you know, we all have our money shit. We all have this emotional attachment about money and so much judgment. So just to start practicing and practicing and practicing and just to say the number 750,000 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I often have to say to people, just stick with one number, just one number, you know, because you've got to be clear, you've got to be confident.
Yeah.
Fundraising requires such a level of integrity. Everything has to be absolutely squeaky clean, above board, and you know. So there's one number. Everybody on the team says the same number. Everybody, you know, is doing the same thing, saying the same thing, and you know, and I think that the way that I can go with somebody like you who had tons of experience with filmmaking, but this would be new for you. The fundraising is to you're talking, you know. We listened to Mark's story. It's about building community. It happens to be a community of people around money, which is a different community than the community you've already built.
100%.
It's a different community, but it's still part of, I just felt, you know, listening to Mark's story, I just felt such a sense of the lightness and the joy that we all have being in our communities.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and
I
that's what
actually-
we can have and bring money in as well. It can be light and joy and not, you know, dark and miserable.
Exactly. I was just thinking when Mark had said it and he was talking about Jill, my first knee-jerk reaction was, oh my God, he's so lucky to have a person like a Jill on the team. I didn't quite catch, I didn't know if all four of your Kathy's Angels were volunteers or paid.
Volunteers, they're all volunteers.
They're all volunteers, yes. I thought, and the other thing is, I just like to mention this, and in terms of the last film, The Two Sons of Georgia, I welcome anybody to go to the site. It's a micro website, the two sons of Georgia.com with a TWO and SUNS.com. You know, when you are working with a team, it's family, isn't it? And their children, their ups, their downs, their celebrations, their losses, they become yours. And when and Hafiz was hoping to be here today and he was unable to be. That's my partner. And the beauty of
he wrote to me, I think, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He
wrote to me.
He came as
Yes.
roommate.
Oh,
yes,
yes.
yes.
Sent you.
Yeah, so he was supposed to be here. But I would say this, whether he was here or not, when you're so close to your family, and somebody has that dream, that film that they've been carrying, and you could actually make it happen. And this is a man who was very brilliant, and he was part of the Nation of Islam for over 50 years. And to have this vision, to have all this information, and I only came up in the civil rights, but was more of the Martin Luther King, more of the pounding the pavement for civil, for justice and freedom and equality, and then of course Vietnam War and et cetera, et cetera. When you then are part of the learning team, not just making a film, but learning through the film, growing through the film, it is just it's an incredible experience. That money really, in that moment, it's important. We all know we're not idiots, right? We know we have to raise some money, but you're so entrenched in messaging, in delivering the storyline, in wanting to make it happen, that you are so hungry to complete it. And maybe this is the impetus for doing it so quickly and well. It's because you want to do it, right? It's not like you're taking on this job and you have to be the great sound engineer or whatever. It's the fact that you really want to be part of the dream, and you really want to do it.
I would say, Shelley, the way that I work is that all we're doing is, when everybody listens to that module community, they're thinking about their team, like you're talking about your team. And all I'm saying is we're going to expand that team to include the donors, the small donors who give to the crowdfunding campaign, who are so proud they gave $50 and they're like, I'm making a movie, and the major donors who actually have the power with their money to really make an impact. the foundations that obviously would be very interested in all your projects,
Mhm.
the grants that are available to you, all of this, it's all just thinking of a larger version of who your
Mhm.
family is,
Mhm.
right, that are making this film. And it's including the money in that family and in that community. And
Mhm.
you're going to love it.
If you say so, I believe you.
You are going to love it.
Yeah.
As Mark said earlier, we're going to put the fun back in fundraising.
Yeah, I wanted to say, Mark, about your project and your films. Kudos to you, because that's a subject, another subject that we have literally had to embrace and look at. First Nations people are our people. They were the setters for our country, this land, and it's so interesting. So I just may be off. I don't want to take anyone's time, but there is somebody in New Mexico, Mark, that maybe you and I could talk about. She's she's an artist. She's a real activist, advocate, and feminist.
Shelley,
and
maybe you could put your info in the chat.
Yes,
and Mark
I
can
will. I will.
contact
Thank you. I'll do
Lovely.
that.
Lovely. So lovely
I'm
to
looking
meet
at your
you.
website right now. The Two Sons.
Lovely to meet you, Shelley.
Yeah, same
All
here
right,
for
so
everybody.
we're drawing to a close, and I have talked a lot, and I wonder if anybody has any last questions or comments that they would like to make. I'd love to hear, particularly if you have already something in mind about what your next step in the 5 stages of expanding your fundraising team, if you've already thought about what the next step could be. And I'd love to hear from everybody. We're a very small group, so I'd love to hear from everybody. Mike, I'm going to call on you. Yes, go ahead.
My question is, what do you, I know you like encouraging filmmakers to work on one film and get it completed. But what if you had a slate of projects? How
Which you
does
do.
that work with your fundraising team approach to something like that? Because what I hear is that filmmakers got a lot of balls they're juggling. One moves forward while another one takes a back seat and things like that. How would you approach that?
I think about it a little bit like the reason that I try to get people to really focus on one thing is because you can drive that forward. You can, everything that you and I have talked about the timing and the dates and the budget and the this and that. It's all about driving that project forward. So I think that if you want to be able to put that drive behind multiple films, it's a question of, it's almost like a mindset thing. I work on this movie, I'm driving this movie from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. I have lunch, and then I move the other movies or something like that. But I find that I have this one client, oh my God, she has this brilliant script. It's so good. That she was going to produce herself, but she's got these other producers working on her other project. She has no control over that, but she's constantly distracted by that. And she can't just keep them separate, be like, I'm working on my project. They're working on, and she just can't keep it separate. So it means nothing is happening, right? I'm not about that. I'm just not about that. If you're moving forward with one film, I have another client right now. She's producing one film of her own, other people producing another one in June, and other people producing another one in September. And so what the plan that we've devised is that the one she's producing for herself, that is going in September. There may be a moment, could be July or August, when if the third film really is going in September, she'll have to stop working on her film that she's driving forwards. But it's really unlikely that that film is going to go forward in September. So she's going to keep moving her film forward. What people do is they stop and wait. They stop and wait for other people to do things. I interviewed my client yesterday on the Filmmakers Live, Michael DiBiasio, and he was saying this, that he's really learned Do not stop and wait for anybody. Do not stop and wait for anything. Make a movie. Make a
Exactly.
movie.
Good. Yes.
Keep moving forward. So when you have a lot of projects to juggle, I would still keep one as the one that's going. The one that's going no matter what. You've got a deadline in September, you've got a deadline in May. You're done. You're on that train. But you know, hey, there may be a day where you don't have anything to do with that train that you've got moving. You have time to work on the other projects, but this one is going. And you're the one who's made that decision. It's not being decided by anybody else. You are the one who's made that decision and is moving forward with it.
Right. Thank you.
Right. Anybody else? Any questions? Oh, Paris, yes.
You know, what you're saying, I so agree with. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, yes. Mhm.
Okay. Fundraising and the way that I was doing for feature films, it was getting to the point where I was just totally ready to quit. I mean, it was just terrible, the kind of trying to raise funds for feature films and all the rigmarole and the craziness you go through. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That you spend your time doing that and not making any films. So I was
Yeah.
waiting and waiting for this
Yeah.
person to call me back and this person to say yes. And it was very depressing. I hated it. I went from being a filmmaker to a producer to trying to negotiate with lawyers and people with money. And I'm not doing anything
No.
but just talking to people who are not going to do anything, even though they said they would.
Development hell.
Yeah, development hell. So now I said, you know, I have my nonprofit. I'm going to make films with that. I've already made a handful of films with it before I got into all this other stuff. So I'm going back into that. So right now, I'm in the phase of raising some money so I can use that to raise money. I'm looking to raise money to build my fundraising team, to build myself so I can network with other people to raise money. I'm not trying. I'm getting the resources right now with my life partner and my business partners, everybody else. I'm like, look, we're going to get this money together, and we're going to use this money to raise money.
Excellent, excellent. I think that's the mistake that pretty much everybody makes. They're not thinking, I got to spend money on fundraising. And another thing I wanted to say, you've heard me tell this story before, but before my mother died, she told me that the story that when she and my father got married, she went off to find a flat. So she finds this flat and she says to the landlady, okay, well, I'll come back. I'll send my husband with the check. So my father showed up black, right? And the landlady said, oh no, we don't have any place for anyone to live, right? So my father went to his friends that they'd all immigrated to England together and borrowed some money. And he was the first person in the group to buy a house. And then he taught everybody to buy houses. So everybody is in real estate except me. And all my cousins, all my uncles, all my aunts, everybody, they're all in real estate. And when she told me that story, I was like, oh, so that's where I get it from. It's this idea that somebody said no, and he was like, okay, well, I'll do you one better, you know?
And the film that's 30 million. We have investors right now who are very much salivating over because they love the story. So that's a project that I gotta kind of wait for. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing the people are going to say
Right.
yay or no. They got partners.
You are not in control.
Yes, I'm not in control.
Yes.
I'm
And
partially.
I said that to my client the other day, and she got very offended. She said, it's my project. I said, but you have no control.
Yeah, but for that one project, I can live with that because that's that
Yeah.
project. I have
Yeah.
other projects with Nadine that we're in total control of that project.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? The Lewis Latimer
Yeah.
project. It's a project
Yeah.
we love to do, and that's going to get done. And my nonprofit's going to get done. So those things I'm not waiting for anybody. That's going to get done.
Right.
You know,
Right.
but that major one, and so each project is different, and each one has its own politics.
Yeah, and I'm currently working on a $12 million film, and what I had to watch myself doing was that I would let go of it. Like a week would go by and I'm like, that can't happen, right? I'm moving this forward. I'm checking in with the people. I'm the one moving it forward. And so I need to do that on a regular basis. But I'm doing what I think was my real work, was working with my clients, that's my real work. But I can just keep checking in on this and keep moving along and not drop the ball. That's the other thing with that.
And because I believe in what you're doing, that's why I got Nadine involved. You know what I'm saying? Because we need help to do the Lewis Latimer project. And we need help beyond us. We need someone with your experience. We have to go outside of our circle because most of the people we know don't know how to raise money. They're filmmakers.
No. And I didn't say this today, but this is a very strange thing, but there isn't much fundraising training out there. And I was a fundraiser before I got to train as a fundraiser, right? It's just not something that you see all over the place, like learn how to fundraise. It's just not there. And I often say I would put it in high school if I ruled the world.
But they will talk about investing. They will talk about business in a way. I have an MBA too. So there's a way of talking about it that's not the way you're talking about it. But it's still these people not with the skills to actually raise money, but with just a sort of like an employee kind of understanding of it, but not as a business person, your own business of raising money.
Right.
Which I agree needs to be taught.
Yes, I would teach in high school. There are some ways like Girl Guides. I when I was around fundraisers all the time, and people would say, well, how did you get into fundraising? And I remember people saying, I started as a Girl Guide selling Girl Scout cookies.
I learned more about raising money by being with friends who raise money. I learned from them. I learned from doing it, not from a book, not from anything else, but by sitting across that table and watching my business partners, go back and forth and going, oh my God, I have no idea. You don't know. You will not know unless you do it, or someone can hold your hand to do it with you.
Right.
I got to add something, Joanne.
Thrilled to have you here. Now, where's Daniel?
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
Yes. I said, I had like a brilliant idea, and I said, like, the first grant I should write a grant to Joanne to teach all my high school students how to raise funds. So
that's a good idea.
That's the first grant we're writing. Like, we already have like some people. We want to make sure to have like at least 10 to 15 students where the grant we can have like, for you to teach them how to raise money.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So we already
when we open the school in New Jersey, then we can open the school in the next place, and we can have a fundraiser start working there.
Yeah. So Paris, we're gonna be raising money for you.
Fundraising for high schoolers.
I forgot to bring Shelley in because I told her that we had a whole New Jersey contingent yesterday. So this is a little New Jersey team right here.
Yes.
Shelley, Paris, and Daniel.
Yes. I can't wait. So I wish I can get Paris' number, Shelley's number.
Put it in the chat.
I just put in the chat.
Okay.
So thank you so much. That's wonderful. I have a question, and maybe this is not appropriate at the moment.
No, go ahead.
But Joanne, you've been talking about what you can do and the clients and whatnot. What does that mean for us to be a client of yours?
Oh, we'll Emily put my calendar link in the chat, and we'll just set up a time and we'll talk. Because I'm not sure which is the right one for you and your team. But we can talk about that. So just book a time on my calendar next week, and we'll talk.
Thank you.
For some reason, I cannot seem to find the chat. I don't know. Maybe I'm.
Are you on your phone or a computer?
Computer. Sorry.
Okay. So if you go down to the bottom, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th icon across.
Okay.
Depends on what type of system he's on. Are you on a Mac or IBM compatible?
I'm a PC. Yeah.
All right. So there's a thing with 3 dots that says more.
Okay, I got it.
Click on that and then you'll see chat.
Oh, he said we send request, so I sent you a request.
Okay. But under more, when you click the 3 dots of more, it'll bring up a
Okay.
window that
Okay, I got
you'll
it.
see chat. There you go.
Okay. Thank you.
Different
Oh,
OS.
no, I just
different
pressed something
OS.
that didn't. Anybody else have a question or a comment about what their next steps are going to be? I know Daniel's next step is a crowdfunding campaign. Mark,
I just
Leo, this is a crowdfunding campaign.
I just feel
What is
really
your next step?
encouraged to do what I've been doing, building the community. This was very validating for me that what I'm already doing is what I need to keep doing.
Yes, yes, yes. You have done a great job of building a team. And you know, some of us who live in big cities, I noticed when I lived in San Francisco, so Leo, close your ears, you're not allowed to hear this, but there wasn't as much of the kind of, oh, I'm a San Francisco filmmaker making a film. That's like not really going to fly. But if you're in New Mexico and you're making a film, that's really an extraordinary thing. And that's another community building thing, you know, I call it the small town advantage. You know, I'm half Trinidadian. So when Trinidadians are making a film, they can literally get the whole of Trinidad to be behind the film and supporting the film. Emily, I think wasn't it you, Emily, a few years ago, put together the Trinidad press list?
Yes,
You
I
remember
have
that?
that somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I have it. So, but we have a list of every journalist in Trinidad who would be interested in, you know, having us on the radio, having us on TV, you know, all of those kind of things. So I think of it as the small town advantage, or in that case, the small island advantage. But it doesn't work so well in a big city where there are lots and lots of filmmakers and you're not as special. But if you're, you know, the one filmmaker for 100 miles, you have the small town advantage that you can use, you know, and you definitely have that, Mark. And like you were saying, those big films that are coming to Mexico, they don't have any New Mexicans in it. They don't have any New Mexican history in it, in those films. I thought it was funny when you said they're shooting it from Montana.
Well, it's true.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else? Any last comments? All right. So I want to thank you all for coming and listening and learning. You know, I try to make fundraising as fun as possible. It's a lot of fundraising is an art and a science. You know, there's some science to it. A lot though is mindset. There's a lot of fear that comes up when we're talking about money. And so we all have an emotional attachment to money. So in my work, I very much am about helping with that. Did we ever, Emily, were you ever able to find the crowdfunding class is still not working, right? Is that right?
No, I have it. I'll pop
Oh,
it in.
okay. Because I wanted that for Leo, because I think Leo should do this, a few hours of work, but I think it would be a good idea. So I just want to thank everybody for coming. Thank everybody for learning. I know fundraising is not the sexiest thing to be learning. But what I think is sexy is actually getting the money that you need to make your movies. That's what's sexy.
I'll agree with you. Whatever you say, I agree.
Thank you, Shelley. Oh, that's great. That's great.
I'm going to say the person who can raise you the money is the most sought after person in the room. You are the sexiest person. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. In the film industry, I'm telling you right now, it's the producer everybody wants to know. They don't care about anybody else. It's you're the guy who gets the money. You're the most important person in the room. Period.
Yeah. And the number of people who say, I will get you the money is just phenomenal. But no experience, no hands-on, no nothing. But they're out there claiming that they can do it, but that's fine.
Well, I just
So,
want to say thank you, Joanne, and
Yvette.
everyone who shared. I mean, this has
Yeah.
been a wonderful experience. And I think my next steps are going to be the professional development grant, because I need to kind of invest in me a little bit first to figure out how I can get everything out into the world. So I'm going to, work on my scripts and maybe look into, grants to help me get to the next level. So
Mhm.
I think
why
that's
don't you look into working with me, Yvette?
well, that's also a part of the whole thing. That's what I need the grants for. I need help to, take it to the next level, Yeah, but definitely that is
But no
something I will,
fundraising without training or support.
yes.
No
Training,
fundraising without training or
Mhm.
support.
training is
It's
very important.
it's the problem is when filmmakers try to raise money without training and without support, is they get disheartened, they get tired, they get burned out, it feels awful. And
Right.
that's not the way, that's not how we want to do it.
Yes.
We want to be successful fundraising because that's fun.
Oh, yeah.
It's fun to get the money and actually make the movies. That's what's fun. It's miserable to try to figure it out by yourself.
And if I can add just one more thing, you're so right about that. You get so disheartened that you feel you're no longer a filmmaker and you just want to quit because that part's not fun. Dealing with all these crazy people and everything you're going through, that's not the fun part at all. It's miserable, to tell you the truth. And but here's another thing: you have a script, and I know probably a lot of you guys do. Don't ever forget about taking your script because you have control. It's all about your control. Turn it into a book if you can. Turn it into a novel. Turn it into an ebook. Turn it into an audiobook. These are things you have power over. And by putting it out like that, you may also make another market. I'm all about empowering independent filmmakers. And that was
But
more
you have the power to raise money and make the film Paris. You do. All right, I'm going to call it quits.
Thank
I want
you.
to thank everybody for coming. I want
Thank
to thank
you.
Emily for
Thank you,
taking
Joanne.
care of us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Good to
reaching
meet
out, Paris.
everybody.
I'm reaching out, Paris.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
yes.
Keep
Take
in
care,
touch.
everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Tomorrow, I am going to be with my book at Books and Books in Coral Gables. This is a fabulous moment for me. All my Miami clients are coming. One of them is going to be doing an interview with me. And I think we're going to see if I can figure out how to live stream it. But the thing that's really amazing is that when I first moved to Miami, when I first moved to America, I mean, in 1984, I was at the University of Miami doing a master's degree in English. And one of the people there was a poet, and he introduced me to all his friends. And so I started going to these arts events, and eventually a group of people decided to start showing experimental art films at Books and Books in Coral Gables. And that's how I got into film. And so tomorrow I'm going to be at that bookstore with my book. Now that,
great.
I have 21 films in distribution, it's going to be 25 in a few months. I have all these clients who are making films, and it's a very full circle moment for me. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
That tomorrow. Thank you.
And Shelley, I'd
All
like
the
to talk
best.
to you too when you get a chance, okay?
Bye,
Okay,
everybody.
who is that? Paris? Yes, of
Paris.
course.
Paris.
Yes, okay,
Bye,
we'll do that.
everybody.
Bye.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Thank you, Wish out.
Thank you
guys.
so much.
Take
Thank
care.
you, everybody.
Bye.